From the Oklahoma newsroom, it is time for the Red Zone, our basketball edition, our extended look at Sooner basketball. And Sooners coming off a big Bedlam win up in Stillwater to get the series sweep this year. Joe Masato joins us on the phone. And Joe, it was a comeback win after the Sooners dug an early hole, but that small roster for the Cowboys depleted really kind of allowed the Sooners to get back in it, and pretty important that they did. What's the significance of getting that Bedlam win for the Sooners as it relates to this season?
Well, yeah, I mean, all of a sudden, you know, and just looking forward to the NCAA tournament all season, I think after that non-conference schedule, a potential bid looked pretty secure. Then down 29-8 Wednesday night in Stillwater, it looked less and less secure for the Sooners, because that was kind of a win that, you know, you would look to getting in this conference when every game is tough. So I think for their NCAA tournament hopes, it was really, really important, especially to get a win on the road and sort of creep closer to 500 in the conference, because I think sort of what OU is looking at is 8-10 in the Big 12 would probably be enough. I'm sure they'd like to be better than that, but you know, even that was looking in doubt if they had lost that game last night.
Well, and that not just another loss, but Joe, that would not be one of those quality losses. I don't know if that's how the selection committee phrases it, but with Oklahoma State down towards the bottom of the conference, even though it's a rivalry game, that still does not chalk up well for the Sooners. I have to think maybe it doesn't derail their NCAA tournament hopes entirely, but that could have been really detrimental to lose that game on Wednesday night.
Exactly. I mean, you said it best there as far as being a quality loss, because if you sort of point to, you know, OU's worst loss before, you know, before Wednesday night at Texas, I guess, maybe at home against Kansas State, but Kansas State's playing so well. Wisconsin early in the season, but they beat Michigan. I mean, they really don't have a bad loss at all. That one against Oklahoma State would have been their first. I think it was really important to get that sweep. I think they really need to circle, you know, after sweeping OSU, they need to circle West Virginia and maybe Baylor as other teams where they probably have a good chance to win those games both at home and on the road.
Well, let's talk a little bit about the road, because it had not been kind to the Sooners in Big 12 play. We actually talked about this earlier in the week, the fact that they hadn't won a conference road game since late in 2017. They happened to have a conference game in December that year, the 17-18 season. Did you get a sense, Joe, of you know, was this a weight lifted off the Sooners? Did they recognize the fact that, you know, that it had been a long time and it was about time to win again, or what was sort of the reaction to, you know, getting a road win in the Big 12 for these guys?
Well, I think the biggest thing was Lon Kruger's probably relieved that he doesn't have to answer questions about OU not being able to win on the road in Big 12 games. But, you know, for the players, I think it was more sort of the joy after the crazy comeback and a rivalry win. I think, you know, they don't pay super close attention to. I know they probably know they haven't been good on the road. I don't know if they were all aware of the streak and how large it had grown, but there definitely was a sense of relief, because with every one of those that passes, you know, it's still a constant thing that comes up because it stands out so much, and now no one's going to point to that anymore.
Well, and we'll talk more a little bit about whether they could get another one here in the next 10 days or so in a second. But let's talk a little bit about the guys that were involved with that comeback win at Stillwater on Wednesday night. And you got to start with Jamal Bieniemy, an unbelievable shooting night, a guy that isn't necessarily more of a defensive guy, Joe, but definitely had an impact on the offensive end. What stood out to you most about just the performance that we saw out of Bieniemy on Wednesday night?
Well, I think what stands out most is just the turnovers or lack thereof. I mean, he did not turn the ball over for the third consecutive game, which is crazy, a crazy number for any point guard, but especially considering that he's a freshman and was just making his second career start. And by the way, those first two career starts at Texas and at Oklahoma State, so two big spots in rivalry games for Jamal Bieniemy. But yeah, I mean, he was perfect from the field. He had 17 points. It's just really, you know, his emergence to this team. I mean, he's been playing all season, but just the importance he has really shown through in the last couple of games. And Christian James hasn't shot the ball as well. I mean, Christian Doolittle's been consistent, but I think you could make an argument that Bieniemy might already be their most important player at this point.
Well, you mentioned Christian James, Joe, and he had been so good throughout non-conference and really has hit the skids shooting-wise. What's your sense of sort of where he is at this point? It seems like it might just be a situation where he has to shoot himself out of it, but not easy to do. What needs to change for Christian James at this point?
Yeah, that's a tough one. I think the coaching staff's trying to figure that out. I think Christian James is as well. I mean, one of the things is sort of in the early in the season, obviously no Trae Young. I think everyone was looking to Christian James to take up that slack, and there was a concerted effort to get him the ball. And I mean, there still is, but I think as the season has gone on, more guys have emerged. And a lot of teams say this, but OU almost every night, Lon Kruger will say, well, it's a different guy every night. And that's sort of been the case. And I think we just got used to Christian James being that guy early in the season. But he's still their most valuable scorer. I think he still stretches the defense in ways that no other player really does for the Sooners, but I don't think it's a thing where everyone is sort of deferring to him, maybe like they did at the beginning of the season.
Yeah, 2 of 7 in that Bedlam loss and 0 of 4 from behind the line, but Sooners win despite that as Brady Manick gets 15 points. You mentioned Bieniemy with his 17. Even Rashard Odoms goes into double digits, so some very balanced scoring there by the Sooners to make up for that. And Joe, it'll be interesting to see in these upcoming games, does that continue or not? Vanderbilt comes to town, the Big 12 SEC Challenge on Saturday. Vanderbilt is who the Sooners drew before they'll get back into Big 12 play next week. Baylor on Monday, at West Virginia, a chance to get another road win for the Sooners. But let's talk about Vanderbilt for just a second, because they had an interesting result on Wednesday night as well. At the same night that the Sooners are playing that Bedlam game, Vanderbilt playing a in-state rival in Tennessee, top-ranked Tennessee in all the country, and they nearly scored the upset. Joe, that was a bit of a surprising result, even the fact that they didn't get the win against Tennessee.
Yeah, I mean, all eyes were on that one last night. Tennessee wins in overtime 88-83, but against a Vanderbilt team that was 0-5 in the SEC coming into that game. I mean, they had lost. There's a lot of high hopes for Vanderbilt coming into this year. They had the first signing class ever where they had 2 5-star guys. One of those just declared for the NFL draft, I think 2 days ago, and Darius Garland, who's a projected lottery pick, but he was he injured himself at the beginning of the year, is out for the season, and their sort of year just went downhill from there. But almost scored the unbelievable upset, and probably would have come to Norman with a little momentum. They still might, but I think OU didn't luck out as far as getting another resume boosting win, but they did luck out in the sense that there's far bigger challenges they could have faced in this Big 12 SEC challenge.
Well, what is, in your mind, Joe, from what you know of Vanderbilt, who's going to be most important for the Sooners going against that team? Because it does seem like that they're capable of not only beating good teams like OU, but maybe doing it on the road. I know that game against Tennessee was at Vanderbilt, but still, if you're capable of knocking off a team of Tennessee's quality, I think you could do that anywhere. What, in your mind, is going to be the biggest challenge as it relates to this Vanderbilt team for OU?
Well, I think the biggest thing, I mean, just looking back at Christian James again, maybe this break in the conference schedule will be sort of a reset game for him to maybe get going against a Vanderbilt squad. But the Vanderbilt still has, capable players. Obviously, there's a little familiarity there with the Big 12 connection with Coach Bryce Drew and Scott Drew, his brother at Baylor. So Oklahoma actually plays Vanderbilt and Baylor back-to-back. So maybe a little gamesmanship going on between the two brothers to game plan how they're going to play the Sooners. But Vanderbilt does still have 1 5-star freshman and Simi Shitu that came in with Darius Garland. So they're sort of building a program in Vanderbilt, one that dropped off here in the last couple of years, but it's still going to be a challenge for the Sooners.
Yeah, and if they do win that challenge, Joe, there's a chance that they could maybe get on a little bit of a winning streak here. I mentioned Baylor on Monday. Baylor's capable, but obviously a team that Oklahoma can beat. And then at West Virginia, which, you know, a lot of years is a very tough road game, but West Virginia is so down this year. You could get to the end of next week, and Sooners could be on a 4-game winning streak potentially, it looks like to me.
Yeah, I mean, and they might be favored in all, you know, the 3 remaining games. Obviously got the win against Oklahoma State, so you're looking at 4-0 over the last 2 weeks if that happens. I think they'd probably be happy even if they win 3 of those. I mean, it would really get them back on the right track. And I know we talk a lot about the schedule and how tough it is, but these 2 weeks are by far the easiest 2 weeks in the schedule and should allow a little breathing room. And you know, we talked about the road streak, but next Saturday at West Virginia, that's sort of the perfect chance to put the streak in the other way and get it up to 2 on the winning side for OU.
Yeah, it would definitely be a change in the questions for Lon Kruger if the Sooners would get that win next Saturday at West Virginia. Again, this Saturday, Vanderbilt at home, then Baylor at home on Monday, then on the road a week from Saturday at West Virginia. Be sure to stay with the best coverage team anywhere at newsok.com and every day in the Oklahoman.